There are so many incredible moments in Marvel canon. But have I told you about the time that Thor defeated the Rhino? Hello everybody and welcome to the first installment of my infinitely long series where I will play Marvel Champions and prove that one of my favorite heroes, Thor, is capable of objectively defeating every villain in the game. I wanted to start this series out by going all the way back to the core set and going against the three villains, Rhino, Claw, and Ultron, to prove that Thor has what it takes. What I didn't know was that the first villain that most players will learn the game against is not exactly an easy matchup for the God of Thunder. My original thought when I wanted to make this challenge was that I would construct a deck that could aggressively mow down the Rhino, defeating him in his first stage in about 2 turns and 2 or 3 consecutive turns for stage 2. Give or take a few turns, obviously. In reality, I was often finding myself threading out, and I think at least one time I was put into the corner and reduced to a 0 life total. And because of this, I realized that maybe the problem was that I had no mechanism for thwarting. I was trying to resolve the game on a 7-turn clock, and I hoped that I could defeat the Rhino before he could complete his scheme. So what is a good answer when you need the smallest monicum of threat reduction? A leadership deck. I assumed that with just the minimum amount of threat reduction, I should be able to use allies to buy me the time I needed to win. This was not a great idea. Whether it was by my own inability to deck build competently, or just being too stubborn, I could not do it, and very quickly realized that I was just going to be schemed out over and over again. So protection. Protection is the answer. All I need to do is elongate the game long enough, not take damage, and then I won't even need to go to Alter Ego. And I hit Shadows of the Past. I'll just defeat Loki. Oh, a treachery. Great. So nothing I was trying was really working out, and quite honestly, I knew this was possible. I had just misplayed any of the aspects that I'd already tried. Maybe there was a way that I could just run back, playing aggression, and actually win within the 7 turns allotted before threat got too high. And I lost. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that maybe the correct answer was to just embrace justice and build what I had codenamed Some Bring the Justice, Others Bring the Thunder. The deck itself is looking to elongate the game and use under surveillance and counterintelligence to basically buy me time in the event that an advance comes into play. This felt like the deck that could do exactly what I was looking to do. Of course, sometimes tensions just get too great and you lose to a Rhino that has so much equipment and a minion swarm that's just big enough to wipe you out. At some point, I was just forsaking any form of a win record in an effort to simply try to figure out what the proper line of play was for this deck to thrive. Game after game, Under Surveillance was buying me the turns I needed. But you know what? Sometimes you just lose to a bad boost reveal. Which brings me to my 4th attempt with Thor Justice. So my opening hand was counterintelligence, 2 hammer throws, surveillance team, and Defender of the Nine Realms. I felt that 2 hammer throws was a little redundant, and mulliganed 1 away. While I know that each hammer throw represents about half of Rhino's health, I knew that that strategy was actually unsustainable to fight Rhino on the right fronts. I draw into a second Defender of the Nine Realms, which honestly is fine. While both won't draw me cards in the same phase, they do represent some form of hand sculpting over the first 2 turns, especially if better lines of play don't present themselves. As should be expected, my first action is to go get Mjolnir and change into my hero form. I play Defender of the Nine Realms since the knowledge of which minion I'll need to defeat is important, and the card draw should inform the rest of my plays over the course of this phase. Luckily, I hit a Hydra Bomber and can just wipe out that threat before drawing my 2 cards. Godlike Stamina and Limitless Stamina. I use godlike stamina as a resource to play Mjolnir, and pay for hammer throw with limitless stamina, surveillance team, and defender of the 9 realms, and take out the bomber and 6 health from Rhino, bringing him to 8. Then I attack for 2, bringing him ultimately down to 6. Yeah, I know. Better sequencing could have improved the tempo of this particular game. After some deliberation, I elect to have Mjolnir in play, using counterintelligence as a resource, despite the fact that it could very well be the difference between me winning or losing an extra turn in the future. I ready up, draw Strength, Ironheart, a clutch, counterintelligence, and Helicarrier. Honestly, losing the first counterintelligence felt like it was a risk in the moment, and I'm lucky that it paid off in the end, but I also think it's important to highlight something that I don't even think I was processing in the moment. Keeping a hand of counterintelligence and Mjolnir represents half of my total hand size, meaning that I would be limiting my ability to draw into things like allies, a lightning strike, or a resource generator like God of Thunder. On Rhino's first attack, I know that I can take it and not risk losing any momentum I might have started building up. He hit me for a total of 4 damage, bringing me down to 10. The encounter card is Stampede, meaning that I could get stunned if I take any damage. This is a risk because even if I defend, all it takes is a single boost icon to leave me stunned and exhausted. After some thought, I elect to take the damage full on. I can't spend a turn clearing the stun, but the threat of being incapacitated for 2 turns is too detrimental to me. And the boost is 0 on an advance. I go to 8 and get stunned. On the player phase, I play Ironheart using my strength and draw into Wiccan, and elect to discard counterintelligence and a helicarrier because I need to make up for Thor's inability to attack this turn with a few extra bodies on the table. I exhaust Thor to clear the stun. I thwart with Wiccan and discard an assault from the top of the encounter deck, bringing Rhino to 5 with an Ironheart attack. I ready up and my draw ends up being an energy, power of justice, surveillance team, and godlike stamina. On Rhino's turn, Ironheart defends for me against an attack for 4, and the encounter card is Shocker, meaning that I will draw into limitless strength and under surveillance and go to 7 remaining hit points. I know that under surveillance is a make or break card for me, so I use Power of Justice to get it out onto the main scheme. Then I use energy to play surveillance team. Then I thwart with Wiccan and manage to get an additional point of damage on Rhino, taking his first stage down to 4. Then I attack Rhino and play Limitless Strength to roll Rhino over to stage 2. At this point, Rhino goes to 15 life, and the breaking and taking that was discarded earlier gets brought into play. I use my surveillance team to take off a threat from the main scheme and move out of the player phase, drawing Hammer Throw, Monica Chang, Asgard, and Unshakable. Wiccan takes the attack from Rhino, and I choose to defend against Shocker's attack in order to help preserve my life total. And ultimately, the encounter cards Enhanced Ivory Horn and Charge give Rhino an extra 4 points of attack. At this point, I'm in hot water. Rhino has a base attack of 7 with overkill before any boost effects. Of course, it's not over till the last life point, so I throw out my hand to play Monica Chang, getting a surveillance team from my discard pile. I'm using the Snoop counters to thwart away breaking and taking. I can't keep getting 2 encounter cards. Due to the dire straits I'm in, I choose not to activate with Monica Chang in order to maintain her hit points. I ready up, draw a Lightning Strike, Jack Flag, Defender of the 9 Realms, and Surveillance Team. Rhino cannot get more than 1 boost icon during his attack, or else the overkill is going to overwhelm Monica and wipe me out. I brace for the attack, and 0 icons! Monica gives me a 2 hit point buffer, Charge gets discarded, and I defend against Shocker's attack. My encounter card just needs to be something other than an attack. Hydra Bomber. I can work with that. Plus I get 2 more cards. Now I have Quake and another copy of Counterintelligence to work with. So as ludicrous as it might sound, I decide that playing Defender of the 9 Realms is worth the risk. It should draw me 2 more cards and empty the threat off the main scheme. Unfortunately, I discarded all but the last 4 cards from the encounter deck, which doesn't worry me too bad, since Shadows of the Past, Assault, and Advance are not in there for the moment. But the scheming is going to speed up soon. The good news, I've drawn into a critical mass of energy resources for Lightning Strike. This feels like the critical turn. I need to wipe these minions out. I discard my entire hand, minus the Thor's helmet I just drew, to hit the board for 4 damage and bring Rhino down to 11 hit points. From there, I change back to my alter ego, pretty sure that I'm solid to make it through the next turn with 0 scheme to speak of, as I draw a hand with admittedly little action. I've got God of Thunder, Genius, 4 Asgard, and Quinn Carrier to add to the Thor's helmet. I get through Rhino's turn almost entirely unscathed, minimal scheming, and a Hydra Mercenary as my encounter card. My turn consists of playing God of Thunder and Thor's helmet before recovering to bring my life points back to a grand total of 11. I clear the remaining scheme and draw back up to my hand size, getting Multitasking, Lady Sif, Power of Justice, and Lightning Strike. On Rhino's turn, he schemes for a total of 3, and the last card in the encounter deck is Hard to Keep Down, restoring Rhino to 15 hit points. After some deliberation, I decide that I should recover 15 myself, allowing me a high amount of hit points to hopefully ride out the rest of the game. Then I change to my hero form. I play out my hand, getting Quinn Carrier out, and spend 3 physical resources to discard the enhanced Ivory Horn. Then I use my copies of Surveillance Team to remove 2 threat from the main scheme. At this point, I've gone through my deck. I add Energy, Lady Sif, and God of Thunder to my hand, joining the surviving Multitasking. I decide to defend against Rhino's attack, and end up going down to 11 after the Mercenary's attack. Time to face my encounter card. First up, my Obligation. Great! Now I'm stunned, exhausted, and my damage is hampered. I'm tough. Okay, now Rhino has a tough status. My best line of play is to empty my hand to play God of Thunder into Lady Sif. I'm able to clean off the stun and get 2 damage onto the Hydra Mercenary due to the guard. Maybe I can draw into a hammer throw. I get another Multitasking, Jack Flag, and 2 hammer throws. Then I remember, I have no hammer to toss. Maybe I should have trained more in the off-season. Erring on the side of caution, I defend for myself and go down to 9 hit points. And I have Lady Sif take the damage from the Hydra Mercenary. Of course, I do make a minor play mistake here and didn't exhaust Sif when also accounting for the damage. But the encountered scheme, Crowd Control, is thwarted away with Multitasking. Then I change back to Odin's Son, recover my hammer, and use as a resource to play Jack Flag. I consider thwarting with Jack, but decide to get rid of the Hydra Mercenary instead. This is the point when the play mistake really rears its ugly head. I use Lady Sif to remove the tough status, and use the last Snoop counter to remove a threat from the main scheme. The Rhino schemes, and the encounter card, Assault, surges into False Alarm, which is fine. Thor is not my thwarting all-star. I manage to recover, grab Mjolnir before changing into my hero form, and I use Power of Justice to play Counterintelligence. At this point, it feels too important to discard or even let remain in my hand for another turn. I hammer throw to bring Rhino down to 7, sending Mjolnir back to my hand before replaying it. I start my turn with Unshakable, Surveillance Team, Defender of the Nine Realms, and Monica Chang in my hand. Rhino attacks me down to 8. Advance is my encounter card, meaning that I need to discard Counterintelligence. I use up the ammo counter on Jack Flag and attack with Thor, bringing Rhino down to 2. I Defender the Nine Realms and find Sandman. At this point, I draw into a hammer throw and defeat Rhino. Looking back at the Lady Sif play error, which is something I didn't even catch until the editing process. It was an error, but because the damage was tracked correctly, I don't believe the integrity of the game was compromised, because she could have been used to break the tough status on the following turn before the hammer throw was played. Alright, everything else from this episode was written and plotted out, and this lessons learned I'm going to do off the top of my head and just sort of stream of consciousness. I think that Thor is objectively able to beat every villain in the game. That's what this entire series is going to be proof of. I do plan to break away from Thor and do other stuff under a different kind of series title once I get my legs under me in terms of creating this content. But I think in terms of the Wave 1 heroes, Thor has his weaknesses and he has his strengths. I think even with the card pool, if I were to have only done this with Wave 1, Rhino is a hard villain. Especially when you first start out and you don't know the game and you sort of have to like feel it out. And I think one of the big things with Rhino is that he doesn't incentivize going to Alter Ego very much. And I already had a dozen games of Marvel Champions under my wing before I attempted the first attempt with Thor in this particular run. So I understood the pacing a little bit more, but I think that Claw is a much better villain for understanding the entirety of the game, whereas Rhino is, I would say, probably a B minus in terms of learning the game. There's not a lot of threat, and it happens so fast, and the stuff from the standard set can really just throw you off base. I mean, that's the Red Skull card, whatever it's called. You know the card. It's right up here. That allowing the villain to scheme, even when you're in hero form, that can totally blow out your entire plan, which I do think does add to why Rhino is an adequate or an appropriate core set villain. It's hard. When I was first learning this game, I probably did 6 to 7 games before I was able to beat Rhino, and it's not that complex. It's just deal a bunch of damage, but like there's more to it when you only have the core set card pool that can be really difficult. So, like I said, I want to explore what makes Thor tick, his weaknesses, his strengths, and, face off of every villain. I do plan to explore beyond just chronological order for this series, just to keep it fresh and new. I want to look at the X-Men stuff and really kind of like see what happens when Thor goes against the Marauders or the Sentinels, and make a fun time of it. So I appreciate you making it to the end of the episode. Oh, and additionally, I want to say thank you to my friend Lewis, my friend Jesse, and Vardane from Critical Encounters. Jesse and Lewis provided a new player perspective on this video as I was editing it, and Vardane provided a more experienced player, content creator perspective. I probably would have made just about the same video, but their feedback did make hopefully a better product, and we'll make for a better product going forward. Even if it was just a single viewing from each one of them, the feedback helped to understand what makes the best product. And I will see you soon, as Claw and Ultron are very much ready to be released. I just need to put that last polish on there and make that as great as possible. Until next time, I will see you later, and thank you for watching.